You are listening to Abnormal Spaces.
I'm Donnie.
I'm Ryan.
In this podcast, we discuss conceptual realities, the researchers, authors, and explorers who describe and define them, as well as our personal experiences in these abnormal spaces. In this episode, we discuss various healing modalities utilizing the manipulation of energy, the practices of Candace Silvers and Balinese healers, and Ryan's own personal experience with her energy healing treatment.
You watch what happens after this.
Be careful what you wish for. So a few episodes back, you had mentioned a healer named Candace Silvers.
Yeah.
And you described this video that you had watched about expansion. And so I watched the whole thing. And first of all, it's really interesting because as it was going, I was remembering some of the things that you had described in the video, like the smoker man and different things. But anyway, I found it really fascinating. She's fascinating. You know, her father was a TV star. Her sister was in Happy Days. Her sister also has a health and wellness company, which is interesting. But so she, in addition to these Balinese healing modalities, she also seems to do some kind of like almost motivational type lectures or whatever. And I thought it was really crazy the way she talks to people in that mode. So like when she's doing the healing stuff, it's one way. And when she's talking to people about how they're lying to themselves and that they really don't want to have success or whatever, it seemed a little aggressive, but I also appreciated it because she's not here to mess around. Like she knows.
Yeah, definitely. She's definitely not here to mess around. You know, just take everything with a grain of salt because we can't know anything that's really going on. But I will say I have attended a couple of these small group healing things they're only 30 minutes long. It's like $35. You know, why not? I was like, why not? You know, let's try it, right? And after all the things that I've seen, I was just like, I have to now. So I did, and, you know, I was kind of nervous, it's pretty standard for me because I'm pretty nervous about most things. So there was about, I don't know, I want to say there was probably about 35 people on there, maybe less. Zoom call, and I don't do Zoom ever, so that was weird too. So I was having a lot of anxiety, just like chronic anxiety. I mean, I have anxiety and I have panic episodes and things like that. And I've had it ever since I can remember. But I haven't really had one in a long time. And a lot of things have happened this year. A lot of people have passed away. And I guess it just kind of caught up to me. And I just spent like 12 days in terror, you know, I thought I was dying.
Yeah.
Like I was, or not dying, but I was like, I surely have to call the ambulance.
Yeah.
A few times, which was crazy. And I'm not getting personal and weird or whatever, but it's interesting how anxiety can really affect your whole system and make you think that so many things are wrong with you and just make your brain spiral out, you know?
Yeah.
As I'm sure many people know. But anyway, so the first one I went on there and you type in the chat or whatever, or you can talk to, but I just put chronic anxiety and acute panic. Like I didn't know what else to put.
Yeah.
So I put that on there and, you know, she's just really nice, really, you know, just straight. And, different people are asking questions. You can raise your hand and then unmute and all that. man, there were people in there for like all kinds of stuff, you know, like Parkinson's and cancer. And there was just a lot of stuff, a lot of COVID stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw, some testimonial videos and there were quite a few COVID ones. Real quick, not to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
There was a lady with Bell's palsy.
Yeah. Yes.
And, you know, they showed still images of her before. I would have liked to have seen video of her before, but
I was in that with her.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That was incredible to me. I was like, how? You know?
Yeah, dude. They were talking and she was like, is it okay if I, put what you've said and what you're saying on as a testimonial for Bell's palsy? And I don't know. I guess it was just a good thing to be on there because it's not very like widely, it's not a huge thing that you see everywhere, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Side note, this is very interesting. The Iteracare thing on Bell's palsy is absolutely crazy. Like you should look that up.
Okay.
So yeah, I did that and I just sat there and she just basically like, she's talking and she was like, even though like talking and we're just talking and we're doing all this, she's like, the healing is happening this whole time. So if you're on this Zoom call, it's going, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, what?
Okay.
Yeah, okay. You know? And, but at the very beginning of the first one, she goes, all right, anybody that's new here, I want to show you how this works. She was like, so put your hands up to the monitor. Like, you don't have to touch it. Just put your hands up to the monitor. And she was like, I'm going to blow on your hands and you just see for your own self. And I shit you not, dude. I mean, it could have been in my brain, whatever. And most people would probably be like, yeah, you just blah, blah, blah. But I felt it.
Wow.
I was like, I felt air. I felt like somebody was just right there breathing, just like this light breathing and just go across my hands. And she goes, who felt that? And I was like, you know, and all these people were like, ugh.
Wow.
So, she goes, I know that a lot of people will write this off and a lot of people will say, yeah, she even said that. And she's like, and that's fine. I wanted to show that time and space don't enter into the equation here. So she goes, you can come to this $35 healing. She does it 4 days a week, I think. You can come every day. And this is absolutely just as effective as if you were laying on the table in front of me.
Wow.
But it's not as thorough just because I guess she works with a lot of points and a lot of things to be very specific when you're in person, you know, like if you were to go down there.
Right. Yeah.
And, you know, it's like anything. It's like if you go to a chiropractor or you go to any kind of sort of healing modality or whatever, like, I mean, you know, you're going to pay $125 for 30 minutes or 15 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever. I mean, it's just what it is. And, you know, her thing is, she's like, I don't work for peanuts and I don't work to get rich. So it's like both.
Right.
And what's crazy is this lady is just always going, man.
Yeah.
I mean, she's going every day. She's like taking people on retreats to Bali and like she teaches this healing modality, which is a Balinese healing modality. Well, I won't get into that right now because I'm still talking about this other shit. I'm trying to like condense so I don't have to do so much work.
Yeah. Yeah.
She did the thing. It was over before you knew it. And a lot of people were talking and saying stuff. And she was like, there's a complimentary consultation on this academy for anyone who is interested in just hearing about what it's about and what you do. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's cool. So I listened to that too. And it's about 6 weeks. It's on a Friday or a Saturday. And it's 4 hours on one of those days, depending on what they choose, I guess, per week. So you'll work 4 hours a week, basically. But then after that 6 weeks, there's a lot of different deepening things. There's the behavioral classes that you can go to for free and all that. And not free. You've paid for it from doing this whole thing. But it's basically a year of deepening, a year of learning the points, the actual points on the body where you can test and everything.
Yeah. Yeah. The stick guy, I don't remember what they called him.
Yeah, that guy's name was Chikorda Ray. He died like a couple years ago, but
the guy that was between the toes and stuff. Yeah, man. it really shocked me. The person, I guess they had like high blood pressure or something, and he had made an indention in his leg with his thumb, and then on the other leg with the toes, he was doing his stick apparatus, and then like kind of worked it out. Next thing you know, that dent is not only gone, but then he tried to make it again, and this skin just sprung right back.
Yeah.
And, you know, the video wasn't the type, I mean, I know that people can do all kinds of magic editing, but it really seemed very legitimate.
It was a documentary. It was documenting those moments.
Yeah.
Because that was the whole point.
Yeah.
Actually, what's crazy is she said the guy that wanted to do the documentary, she said, I didn't want to have a documentary. That wasn't the point of this trip.
Yeah.
And a guy that was going on the trip, he was like, do you mind if I bring a nice camera and document some of this? And she was like, well, yeah, I mean, I guess so, you know.
Yeah.
And as long as they're okay with it, you know.
Yeah.
So he did. And yeah, dude, I mean,
when there are faith healers or people that use alternative modalities or whatever, it's just ingrained in us in Western society to be skeptical because everything's been quackified. So like we immediately are like, I don't know. But to see it at that point, I was like, okay, my doubts have been assuaged, I guess, or, you know, right at that moment, I started really paying more attention and like allowing myself to believe it more. I hate that it takes something like that. But by the same token, you know, I mean, there's 40 plus years of Western medical propaganda.
you know, Western people need the proof. Most people need the proof unless you're of the culture or you're, you know, like an Eastern culture or something where you're brought up that way.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, man. And especially in these third world countries where they can't afford to go to the doctor and they can't afford to have all these crazy, and like insurance doesn't pay for, they don't have insurance. They don't have,
right. Yeah.
you know, you know, that's why like Qigong and all this stuff was created for, you know, farmers and just people that lived in the villages and, you know, so it's really amazing. Oh, Shiva Murti. That's what the healing modality is called. So,
right. Yeah. One of the Shivas. Yeah. One of the goddesses, whatever.
The main, I think he's like a high priest or something of Bali. So, he's like the big healer cat. And his name is, I think, Ratu Nabe. He was in that video, the big guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
People were on the table and everything. And he's like, your pancreas. And the lady on the table is like, well, yeah, I have diabetes. And then Candace Silvers was like, yeah, well, he's saying he found your diabetes. You know what I mean? Yeah. And her eyesight and all that stuff. And it was just really weird. And the lady that got choked by her husband, like, it looked like he did nothing. Just poked some places, a few places, and then like waved his hand over these places and blew on it a little bit or something. Yeah. And then this lady just starts like gagging and coughing and like just, you know, like I said, man, we need so much proof. And when you said at the beginning of this, what did you say? Something about in her human behavioral thing, like you don't want to get better or you don't want, right? I heard that from Robert Monroe. Yeah. He said, most people don't want to get better. He said, he called it a death wish. He was like, if you have cancer and you get special attention and then your cancer goes away, you don't get no more special attention. You got to cook your own stuff. You got to go back to work. You got to deal with all the stuff of life. Yeah. So, whether you know it or not, and even just by downplaying it, doing all this stuff, you're just constantly defeating yourself. Right.
Well, and again, what we know about neuroscience and the way the brain operates, to say we're inherently lazy isn't fair. But what happens is there is a comfortable mode of thought, a familiar way of being. And so we would much rather just do that. And so if the familiar way of being is, well, this is not going to work out for me, or I don't believe this because I already believe this, so I'm not going to update my beliefs, or there's no amount of information that's going to change these beliefs. Most of that's just because it's comfortable and familiar and we're kind of lazy. And so all of that ties together. It's all the same stuff. And it's almost like there's a blockage, some kind of energy blockage in your brain that prevents new information from coming in or prevents you from believing as equally true this new information as opposed to what you previously had. So, of course that makes sense. And when I saw that documentary first, and then I saw some of her talks where she was doing more of motivational behavioral stuff. And that's when I was like, okay, yeah, she's on to it. I agree with a lot of what she said. Harsh in her delivery somewhat, but I did agree with a lot of what she said.
I think harshness is almost required at some points, though. I mean, if you really want to get down to what's wrong with you or what you think is wrong with your life,
right,
then you don't want to be coddled into it. That's the last thing you need.
That's right. That's why the tough coaches in the movies, those are the ones that always get the best performance out of the athletes because they're like, you can do better.
I don't think she was doing that.
No, her tone is very authoritative.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of it. And she's like above it. She's not going to listen to excuses.
Yeah. Everybody has an excuse about so many things. I can't imagine how many that I have if I was to sit down here and write it down in a notebook.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and she had me actually analyzing some things going on in my life and things that, I'm like, I'm lying to myself about this, or I'm deluding myself, or the whole fear of success thing and all of that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's real. Yeah. It's a real thing.
Yeah. Or I equate money to just being a piece of shit.
Right. Yeah. You're like, well, it's not fair for me to quote unquote get ahead, And
when so many people have
right.
It's like these stories that are just ingrained in us,
Limiting stories.
Oh yeah.
That
keeps everything from happening.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's wild. But yeah, the way she explained it all was very direct, very authoritative, but also appreciated, because I knew she knew what she was talking about.
Back to this little session that I set in on 2. So the first one that I did, we did the thing, and then it was weird. I just went about my day and kind of did my stuff, and I still felt a little anxiousy and all that stuff. And even on there, she says, this can go on for up to 72 hours, basically. So you might have weird pains, you might have just all kinds of weird things happen. So just be on the lookout for it.
Yeah.
And don't get freaked out about it. And so wild that night, we're just sitting there watching our show or whatever. I wasn't even thinking about what happened the day before. I was just watching the show. And I felt the most peaceful that I've felt in that entire 2 weeks. And I felt so relaxed. And this is really weird. I felt like there was a super dim light right above my head. And I couldn't see the light, but it was just I could barely just see this on the horizon of the top of my vision. And I just remember laying there and I felt like I had taken some tranquilizers or something,
Wow.
but I wasn't sleepy. It was like a glowy, just a nice feeling. And I slept really good that night.
Wow.
And I hadn't slept. I was sleeping 1 hour increments, waking up. And what I think is it's us. Our body does the healing. That's not to say that the person that is facilitating this raising of energy or helping to clear blocks or identifying whatever isn't. It's both.
Yes. Yeah.
But I don't think that there's somebody that's just going
right.
and then your body is not intelligently going, oh yeah, there is something here.
Yeah.
So I think it's both,
Yeah.
Somebody is just creating a favorable environment and conditions for your cells to resonate with that.
Yeah. Well, and if we create our own reality, which I believe we do, then why wouldn't that be the case?
Absolutely.
Why wouldn't it be our own energy? Because it's our own reality, because all of this actually comes down to I, which is not even here. But if all of that is the case and we accept all that, then why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't putting your hands up to the screen? Why wouldn't you feel the breath? That makes sense to me.
Yeah. Or like, saying all of our energies. You really do have to go back and back and back when you start talking about individual instances of people being able to use energy or people being able to direct energy or whatever, because we look at it as a person who can direct energy. We're not looking at it as energy directing energy.
Right.
Like I say in every single podcast, it's all just one thing. So like Donnie said, if you are seeing that and you have some experiences with that, or you have some sort of, quote, enlightening moments of seeing the oneness, then that's just more proof for you that's what's going on.
Right. Well, and, it's interesting too, because how many times, and this can be, something very, pedestrian, very mundane, but you're confronted with evidence of something that you don't want to accept. And you really have to. There's no reason not to accept it other than you just don't want to. And I kind of feel like some of this stuff is that way. I feel like, well, that's too easy. I can't just change my mind. She was talking to Candace Silvers was talking to this lady who had struggled with eating disorders and weight problems. And ultimately it was just a very poor self-image that she had. And she was getting frustrated with her. Candace was getting frustrated with the patient because you could tell that the patient did not want to accept that it really is as easy as starting with the premise that life is beautiful, I am beautiful, I do beautiful things, that makes me beautiful, that makes the world beautiful, etc. That's too easy. And I'm like, okay, but taking a pill is not too easy. I mean, it's all too easy.
Right.
If, when you break it down, so why don't you do the thing that you actually have control over, to a degree, which is your thought processes, how you do it. And I thought it was great. She said, we're going to go out and we're going to feed these poor indigenous Balinese people or whatever.
Yeah.
And she's like, you are going to feel beautiful when you do that. And that's what you need to remember. And that's, the approach you need to take. And I was like, right, that is exactly right. You put the beautiful energy out, you're going to feel more beautiful. But at the end of the day, even if you didn't do that charitable thing, still by virtue of you going, look, I want my universe to be beautiful and I want me in my universe to feel beautiful. That's where it starts. That's it.
Yeah. And why do you see so many saints and gurus and whatever you want to call them? It's all about service for them. And even if I don't like to say attained enlightenment, I hate that term, but even if they have realized the self or whatever it is, what they say is so people say karma.
Right.
So the karma it's almost preordained. It's almost like it's going to happen no matter what.
Right.
Our conversations, everything we do, how we react, how we figure things out, or if we realize something or we don't, or whatever, that's the karma. Because we believe we are people.
Right.
And if you believe you're a person, then you believe there are other people and other things. So that is the wheel of karma, right? When there is no person, then there's no more karma.
Right.
Because there's no more attachment.
Right. Yes.
Right. So this was really cool to me because I always thought of karma like, I do something bad to you, something bad happens to me.
Right.
Well, that may be true. It may not be true. I don't know. I don't think so because there's a lot of rich people who
do a lot of bad things.
Yeah. What I say is that, and after hearing that, is that karma is the thing that the personality just will do, because like in the last episode of No Free Will, we're not doing it.
Right.
It's the karma doing it.
Right. Yes. It's the energy that was already there. It's
the interaction of two make-believe solid things based on their conditioning and how they were raised.
Right.
That's it.
And the reality they've created and the stories they've told themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And things we call miracles or things that we call insights or enlightenments or whatever, that's also karma.
Right. Well, and what's crazy to me is any kind of energetic healing a lot of times deals with some kind of blockage somewhere. And I feel like it's a belief blockage. Like it's so difficult to just say, okay, I'm going to believe that that's the case. When we have already done that, we already believe we're a person. We already believe we're separate from everyone else and that we're this like individual or whatever. And the thing is, we put some kind of blockage between, okay, I just believe I'm an individual and I believe that I'm just energy and that there is just energy and there's not a me. And I feel like learning these things helps you to remove that blockage.
Yeah, I think so too. It's all about remembering. You know, I've heard that before, and it's taken many years for me to understand for a lot of these little weird things that you just shrug off, like it's all about remembering. And I'm like, okay, you know,
Yeah.
like remembering that you're blah, blah. But now that I look at it in a fresh sort of way, it's remembering to pay attention to your idea of yourself and others and the ideas that are happening that you believe. And when I say you, I mean consciousness. So like your consciousness and everything else, it's like you're drawn into it somehow.
Yeah.
And you just identify with it because you've never been invited to not.
Right. Yeah.
No one's ever come up to you, for the most part, and said, how do you know your back's hurting?
Right. Yeah.
If you were your back, then you wouldn't know that your back's hurting.
Right.
What knows that your back's hurting?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, I know it. Well, what are you that would know that your back's hurting?
Right.
And they would also say, what are you that said I?
Right.
You hear that. You hear it coming out of the mouth.
Yeah.
What hears that?
Right.
You know, when people go to the gurus and they go to all this stuff, they're just basically going to get a constant reminder for themselves as many times as they need it, and maybe forever, because you see the disciples that have been there for 50 years, and
Right.
they're like banging on the drum and singing,
Yeah.
which is great. Well, do whatever you want. But the guru, they're just saying the same thing over and over and over and over and over.
Right.
They just say, who wants to know?
Right.
Who wants to know? Who wants everything so bad?
Right.
Who wants to be healed?
Who wants?
And this goes back to Candace Silvers, because she also talks a lot about that. She's like, who wants it? Who wants that?
Yeah.
Have you ever looked to see who doesn't or who does want? She talks about disappearing, basically.
Yeah.
Seeing that you are not all of these things and conditions and movements
Right. Yeah.
in your consciousness.
Yeah.
Consciousness doesn't move.
Right.
Right. It's like a screen. You know, we've all heard this, or, well, I mean, maybe we haven't, but the screen and the movie that's projected on the screen. So nothing ever happens to the screen.
Right. Yes.
It's just a way of saying you're the screen. Even though that's still an idea of a thing, but it just gives you like sort of an idea of, well, you watch a movie and it's just like, it could be the bloodiest, craziest, gory, or the happiest, funniest, or whatever.
Yeah.
But it makes no mark on the screen.
Right.
Ever.
Yes. I tend to notice little synchronicities or things that correlate or explain events or feelings or things. And I think it's really interesting that for a long part of my life, I thought that my definition of how A gets to B is it. And so anytime A didn't get to be that way, I just, didn't notice it or dismissed it or whatever. And now I'm more open to looking to see, okay, did this thing happen perhaps because this other thing happened and I would never have drawn a correlation between those two. But now, because I am trying to be more observant and trying to be more open to letting the the reality that my consciousness has created, I'm letting it show me rather than me trying to tell it. And that is very eye-opening and revelatory in some ways. So the other day, I was having a conversation with an 81-year-old man, and he was starting to say things that I knew were going to be interpreted poorly by the other people in the conversation. And all of a sudden, I noticed these, they're almost like, they were like when you look at like a paramecium under a microscope or something, there are these little like almost single cellular organisms. And my very first thought was, oh man, that's just stuff on your eye. And you're just like, if you went and rinsed your eyes out, that would be gone and you wouldn't see it. And then I was like, wait a minute. I wonder if this has anything to do with the energy that's happening right now. And I wonder if these aren't like little energy toxins or like something that, is going to cause this negative association with these other people. And as it turned out, we exited the conversation and now I'm talking to the other people and they were getting negativity from who was a very friendly man and didn't say anything quote unquote negative, but what he was saying could easily be interpreted as negative. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that stuff was floating around. Like back to, we talked about how you encode words with intention and how the energy travels along with the sound waves and how those sound waves are encoded with whatever that intention is. Now I could visually see it. And I could see these little squirmy dudes, and I'm like, well, there it is. There's and we have talked about it before, but it was that. And again, I'm letting it be revealed to me rather than me trying to, although my first instinct was, like I said, to go, I bet if I rinse my eyes, it's just some film on my eyes. But then I'm like, no, pay attention to this. Let it show you and see what comes out of this.
Yeah, man, that's cool to hear. The first time I really started thinking about energy was in my 20s when I was like having all those astral projections. And then I found that book, Astral Dynamics by Robert Bruce. And is the thickest book I've ever seen. It's as thick as the Bible. But I guess it has to be. There was a part in it that was called New Energy Pathways. And I was like, And at that point in time, I was like, like my eyes are rolling, But I started reading about it, and then it said tactile imaging. Basically, the way he explained it, paraphrasing, obviously, is that most people visualize visually. They try to see it because we've been taught that way, like to see the image.
Yep.
And he was like, that does not work for 99% of people.
Right.
He said, what works is feeling.
Yep.
And so he said he created it. I don't think, but I think that he did do a lot of really good work and a lot of exploration and figuring out what was where, because there were a lot of instructions on how to do things.
Yeah.
Like conjuring a little energy ball and like bouncing it through your arms and bouncing the energy up and down your body, raising it through your feet, activating the soles of your feet and your hands and just moving it all around. And this played into being able to separate your etheric body from your physical body eventually, so that you could pretty much at will have an astral projection consciously. You don't have to go to sleep. I never got to that point so much,
Yeah.
I did do the bounce, and I did like my friend now, like he way got on it, and he was like, he goes, dude, I did that energy bouncing thing last night. And he goes, I vibrated right out of my body. Like, he goes, I didn't even go to sleep.
Wow.
And he goes, then I got scared and then I got up. You know? And
yeah.
I was like, yeah, dude. So, I'm sitting there at my grandma's house at the time and nobody's there. I put a pillow under my feet and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this tactile imaging shit. I'm going to, so the only thing I did was it said, imagine the soles of your feet. Just kind of see them loosely and like feel where they're at. You kind of feel a subtle vibration and where they're placed on the floor or whatever, the texture of whatever. And then you start to imagine maybe a water or a scratch or a sensation that just goes from your heel to your toes and back and forth and back and forth, or around the sole of your foot. So I started playing with that, and then I started feeling this sort of buzzy kind of sensation, and it started feeling like blood was going to that area or something, you know. And as I imagined it more and more, and I could increase the speed of it, the bounce, you know. And then you start to feel this. He said in the book something like, feel like your legs are sponges that are like taking up water up into your where your navel's at, because that's like the storage. That's the main storage area of the energy. And side note, qigong, they talk about that, the dantian, that's your main storage center for energy. And the qigong people say that you need to charge this every day because you're going to use it every day.
Yeah.
And nobody charges it.
No,
and that's why we're all so messed up. So anyways, you know, I start feeling this sensation, you know, maybe after 10 minutes or 15 minutes of this water. My legs are cold, and it's like this cold water going up through my legs and going into my stomach. And then my stomach starts fluttering, you know, like you had like gas or something. You know, and it's like going like, blub, 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 blub. And then at a point, it was so strong. I remember this. It was such a strong memory. It was so strong that I was starting to get alarmed. And I couldn't stop it. So I stopped and I sat up and I had the book next to me and I'm like reading it. And then there was a sentence in there that said, this will create its own momentum and you won't be able to stop it.
Oh, wow.
Especially if you're new to it, because you're not used to it.
Yeah.
And it said, so get up, walk around, take a shower if you have to, try to take your mind off of it. I shit you not, man. I got up, I walked around. It was going full force, man. Like for probably an hour, probably about an hour. And I took a shower and everything, and it was still going in the shower. Got out of the shower, still going. And then like it eventually started to die down.
Wow.
So that was my introduction to like this energy world. And I was like, that was real.
Yeah, right.
That was the realest thing I've ever had happen with, you know, with that, at that time, you know.
The funny thing is, sometimes in the quote unquote quackification of non-Western medicine, and we've talked about placebos before and the placebo effect, and we did these tests and we can't prove why the patient felt the way they felt or whatever. And I'm just like,
it's a good word.
It's a good word, but
placebo.
But get over it, man.
Yeah.
Like seriously.
What can we call this? Placebo? Yeah, that sounds good.
At the end of the day, you felt what you felt. There's no lying about that. And it doesn't matter. Yeah. You felt it. You believe it. That's all that matters. So it's hard for me sometimes because that's in there, and I have to remind myself, like, it doesn't matter. Their reality is that, and they experience that, and that is as real as anything else.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like duh.
Right. Yeah.
If you really want to get down to it, if it's happening to you, then
right.
What other question?
If the end result is the same, then what does it matter?
What does it matter?
It doesn't. Back to when you were talking about the tactile visualization or whatever, that was one of the things Candace Silvers talked about as well. Not in those terms, but she essentially said the same thing. Like, when you visualize something, don't just visualize the object or the thing or whatever. Visualize how it feels to have accomplished that. Visualize how it feels to have that. Visualize what your world looks like now that this thing has changed, whatever that is. And that's such a more comprehensive way of doing it because, if we just focus on the object, well, the energy that creates that object could create anything else. So we're not actually believing, we're not actually seeing the whole, I hate it, but manifestation of it all. So, of course it's not really going to work as well. It's like, it'd be the equivalent of if you wanted to have like a birthday cake or something, and the only thing that you're imagining is the candle. Well, you're not going to get any of the deliciousness of the cake or the, nourishment or enjoyment or whatever. But why stop there? Think about the whole party. Think about your friends there. Think about everyone having a great time. That's what it's about. It's not the cake. It's not the candle. It's the pure enjoyment of the whole thing.
It's the emotion.
And the emotion.
It's the feeling of lightness and the feeling of being around people that you really love and care about. And, it's like when Alan has a party or something. I mean, for real, like, I'm going to call out Alan, whatever. What's up, Alan? It's like when he has a get together, man, I don't like to go to parties.
Right.
But man, there's just something super special whenever all these old friends get together. It makes me feel so warm and comfortable and good.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of a time.
Yeah.
There's all this stuff that happens, and it's not, I'm not thinking that at that time.
Right.
But as I reflect on it later, I'm like, man, it's like an energy bath that's good for your soul or something, and it's just wild. To me.
Well, that whole place is full of a lot of purity, and I think that that's very helpful. And, so you go to some parties and there's a lot of pretense, and that is very off-putting to more genuine people or people that are sensitive to that. And, you go there with him or that kind of party or whatever. And there really isn't any of that. We can all leave all of those anxieties and ego, we can check them at the door basically.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right. And who wouldn't want more of that,
Yeah. At a point, it's almost like we don't even have to be talking to each other. Just the gathering of this energy, it's tangible. Like you can feel it. Like it's just there. It doesn't matter who you talk to.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you even know them really.
Right.
But they're from a period of time where you're like, oh yeah, I've seen that person around. Or,
Yeah.
Whatever. It's just really, really interesting. And
real quick, another thing is if there is someone there that is not in the same headspace or not having the same energy, it is so obvious.
You can tell so fast.
It is so obvious. I know. And those people usually see themselves out or end up leaving early or whatever, and we're all glad. But it's like, it's just painfully obvious. Mm-hmm. They just don't fit.
That sounds really bad. Like, you don't fit in, it. Like, no, it's not like that at all.
No.
Nobody acts any different toward that person.
Right.
It's just they're there for a minute and then you don't see them anymore.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's not like a get on my level thing, but it's also like, hey, this is the one place where you can just let all that go. You don't have to worry about this stuff.
Right. Nobody cares.
Nobody cares. You're not here to impress anybody.
There's a guitar with 4 strings. Go in there and play it.
Right. It's out of tune. Who cares? Go do it.
Yeah. Not to get all like corny and everything, but it is a place of kind of expression. Like you can just kind of get some things out, like, and play some loud music with people and be out of tune and just be creative in the moment.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter. Nobody even cares.
Nobody even cares. And
everybody cares.
Right. Yeah.
It's both. It's like,
right. Yeah. Well, and like, it's not even going to be really preserved or anything. Like,
no, not at all.
That's the other thing. It's like a sacrifice to the expression gods or something. It's awesome.
And then it goes away, and then you're just like, wow.
Yeah.
Something like that is so precious in this experience of life, in my opinion. That energy is like a completely peaceful energy, a contentment. I don't know what you call it.
It's almost like an alignment in some ways.
An alignment. Yeah, that's what it feels like. The biggest misconception is just like that anything has to be understood.
Right.
And that I have to understand things and I have to figure anything out. And energy you can't create it. You can't destroy it. It doesn't need to be figured out or not figured out. So what do you do with that?
Right. Yeah. And it's not good or bad. And so how do we do our little predictions?
Absolutely.
How do we frame our little expectations?
Yeah. So that goes back to the energy moves as mind,
Right.
as images, as whatever. It just moves.
Yeah.
That's all it does is move and change.
Yeah. Until you block it, and then that's a problem.
When you block it, that's it moving and blocking.
Yep.
When you accept, that's it accepting. So that's the karma cycle. The best things that I've ever heard are people like, Ramana Maharshi and Nisargadatta, like these Indian sages that just are so direct. It
Yeah.
is the most amazing shit to hear.
Yeah.
When they're just like, your life will just do what it does. Leave it alone.
Right. Yeah.
Why do you like,
Who do you think you are?
yeah, like you don't have anything to do with that.
Right. Yeah.
Leave it alone.
Right.
You're already not that. Just brush it off. Like,
Right.
look at it. Just watch it.
Yeah.
Well, watch it like a movie, like your favorite show.
Yeah. Yeah. Or like a storm rolling in. Like, okay, here comes the storm. All right. And there goes the storm. All right. Great.
Who cares? Like, who wants to know? Who cares? Like, you ask yourself this question, and if you're sincere about it, you really follow it. Just like you would do anything, like you would exercise or whatever you're into. You really like follow this inquiry. Who wants to get better? Who wants that? Who said this? Like, who wants to know?
Right.
You
yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Who is it that wants to know so bad? And what are you going to do with it when you know?
Right. Yeah.
Like, these questions just always point back to the who. You can't find it. You can never find it because it's not real.
Right.
You can't find the who.
Yeah. Yeah. The who isn't real. The why doesn't matter. The how is going to show you. I mean, the when it doesn't exist.
The who, the how, the why are all the same thing.
Well, basically,
they're
yeah.
all the same movement.
Yeah.
Who or I is no different than the word hamburger. It's the same thing. You wouldn't say hamburger wants to go there. You say, I want to go there. But for some reason, that karma gives I more importance than the word hamburger.
Right. Yeah.
But actually, it's no different.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, then it's like, well, a hamburger doesn't want anything. Well, how do you know?
Yeah.
Have you asked the hamburger?
Who knows? Who knows?
Right.
Hamburger doesn't know.
Hamburger don't care.